Hi everybody, hope you all are doing well and keeping warm. I know lots of folks are without power or having trouble with their internet connection. I know I missed fifth period this morning for the same reasons. So just know that we will, regroup, get back together when we next see each other in class. Hopefully when everyone's power and internet and everything is working again. So I'm going to go ahead and make a video of the lesson for anyone that misses it, and just know that, if you have a chance to see this video, look at your homework, work on your homework, do the best you can, and we'll talk about it all together when we next see each other. All right, that being said, I'll go ahead and dive into the lesson. So, today we're just going to talk about, what kind of reader are you? And this is sort of the beginning of our nonfiction unit. So we are going to start reading some nonfiction pieces today. As we talked about earlier, fiction, right, the stuff that's made up, nonfiction, the stuff that is real. So today, for example, we're going to be reading some articles, right? So first thing we want to talk about is what makes a reader, right? Do all readers always understand everything they read? Do I, right? Of course not. There are definitely things that I don't understand when I read, especially if I'm reading nonfiction and they're talking about something that I know nothing about, right? So, this is an example that's just fiction, and I have lots of questions, right? So if I read this, Tommy was nervous. Susanna could tell because she knew he liked to talk, and yet he hadn't said a word for nearly 50 miles. Not that she could blame him. She was nervous too, and excited, and scared. It was dusk when they got off the Taconic Parkway, switching on the headlights as they traveled through rolling farmland, a Ralph Lauren landscape, where the houses were so perfect they just knew that they were owned by doctors and lawyers. They were, quote, mini estates, or enclaves with names like Foxfield Meadows, and they didn't really grow anything except maybe sun-dried tomatoes and arugula. So, I don't know about y'all, but I got a bajillion questions, right? I want to know who Tommy is. Why is he nervous? Why isn't he talking? What's going to happen next? Who is this Susanna person? Is that sister, friend, mom? No clue, right? And why is she nervous and excited and maybe a little scared? Where and what is the Taconic Parkway? I'm assuming some sort of highway, but is it real or made up? No clue. Why are they exiting at that point, right, with all those fancy houses around? And why is it that they're pointing out how fancy those houses are, right? Lots and lots of questions, stuff that I have no clue about. So I need to make sure that I have some strategies so that when I get confused or when I don't know what's going on, I can help myself out, right? So let's take a look at what those strategies could be, right? When we're reading fiction and something starts to not make sense, we call that meaning breaking down, right? No clue what our book is trying to get at. We might not know what's happening, who's talking, where the characters are, right? It might be that there's a lot of action and details, and so all of that is sort of getting jumbled up in our mind, and it's hard to pick apart what exactly is happening. There might be some words or phrases that we don't understand, or just the way that they're worded are a little weird or complicated. Maybe we're not feeling the most focused that day, and so we're just having trouble getting a handle on what it was we just read. When we're starting a new book, right, there's lots of things we don't know. Imagine this was the beginning of your book, right? Well, we talk about starting off in the middle of the action, pulling your reader in because now they want to know more. I definitely want to know more because right now I barely know anything, right? So when we start a book, lots of things we don't know. And then if I restart a book after it's been a while, right, sometimes I've completely forgotten what was going on in my story, and I need to sort of refresh my memory. And all of these things, right, when our book is for some reason not making sense, or when anything we read is not making sense, there's a whole bunch of things that we can do about it, right? We can slow down, reread. That's the biggest one that I do, is go back and reread, see if I missed something important. I can keep reading and see if maybe my questions will be answered, right? If this was the beginning of my book, I imagine, right, I can't go back and reread. This didn't really give me any more information, and there's no more book to go back to, right? I'm just going to have to keep going and hope that eventually they'll tell me who Tommy and Susanna are, why they've been traveling for 50 miles, and all that time Tommy hasn't been talking, right? I'm going to have to just keep going and hope that they answer my questions in the future. I might intensify my envisioning, right? So I might go back and look for little clues that might help me picture what it is that's not making sense. So if I'm thinking about this, right, I'm imagining, okay, 50 miles, well, that's way too far to like walk or run or anything. They must be driving, right? And then I get confirmation. They get off the Taconic Parkway, that sounds to me like a highway, right? Switching on the headlights, okay, they're definitely in a car, right? It sounds like it's almost nighttime, starting to get dark, right? Dusk. And a Ralph Lauren landscape. I don't really know what they mean by that, but it sounds like they're in some place pretty, right? Rolling farmland, perfect houses, right? Probably big, fancy houses, right? Mini estates. And I don't really get what they mean by probably didn't grow anything except sun-dried tomatoes and arugula, but I do know that those are like fancier vegetables that I usually only see at like restaurants or something. Not normally the stuff that you would just like buy at the grocery store. Okay. I could look at the blurb, right? So if I'm reading a book, I could go back and read, the back of the book, read that little inside flap and see if, based on what they tell me about the book, maybe what I'm reading will make a little more sense. I could read it out loud a little bit, right? Sometimes that really helps me. If I am just reading it in my head, sometimes things can sound a little weird, but then when I start to read it out loud, I'm like, oh, okay, that's what that means, right? Because you can hear when you read it out loud when something sounds a little off. I might activate my knowledge or infer, like I just did, right? I might not know why they're saying this. They didn't grow anything except for sun-dried tomatoes and arugula, but I know from outside knowledge that these are some fancier vegetables, right? Not your like corn and potatoes, right? Let's see here. I was able to infer, right, that they were in a car. I can decide if I get the gist of it, right? Meaning I understand enough of what's going on that if I keep reading, it'll probably start to make sense as I get more information. And this one is sort of a wait and see how it goes, right? If I'm like, I think I got it, I'm going to keep reading, see if my questions get answered, but it just gets more confusing, then I might go back and reread, right? So I could try a couple of different strategies for that one. I might use context clues, right? If I don't know a word, look at the parts of the word, or even use a dictionary or just Google it, right? I don't know about y'all, but I'm not going to go flip through a dictionary when I can just Google it. But before I do that, right, I want to challenge myself to look at the rest of the sentence, the rest of the paragraph, see if they give me any hints as to what that word might mean. And I look at the different parts of the word, see if those can give me any clues. Now, when we're reading nonfiction, right, sometimes it can be pretty similar. So let's take a look at this article. It's 1 and then 2 slides, right? And I'll talk about some of the things that are standing out to me. So how drones work. There's more than just physics keeping these small wonders aloft. When things look easy, they're typically anything but. From Ted Williams' swing to Raymond Carver's prose to Jennifer Lawrence's acting, this has been demonstrated time and time again. You might think it's a leap to include drones with these effortless artists, but hold your judgment until after you watch an unmanned aircraft dance gracefully across the sky. Because while these machines may look like little more than propellers and plastic, these aerial acrobats actually pack a lot of tech into their lightweight frames. In order to describe how drones work, you have to first distinguish them from their predecessors. Remote control helicopters, according to Michael Perry, public relations manager at drone maker DJI, the key differentiator between the two airborne devices is that drones have some level of autonomy, meaning they can fly, hover, or navigate without input from a pilot. When you're fully engaged with every single part of the flight process, that's technically not a drone, says Perry. The ability to self-stabilize, to be able to hold a GPS-based position, that's the level of autonomy that actually makes it an intelligent machine. Okay, so I read that, right? But do I actually know what all is happening there? Not really, right? Tech is not my personal, big interest or necessarily something that I know a lot about, right? So if this is something that I'm having to read, right? I need to get information out of this. Well, the first thing, right? I'm not gonna just give up. Of course I'm gonna get stuck at some point, right? That doesn't mean I'm just gonna put it away and not like read it or think about it, right? So I can reread and try and figure out what were the parts that were not quite making sense to me. And sometimes even just going back and rereading can help me understand it. So if I go back, reread, find those bits that don't make sense, and I'm still having trouble, then I can be using my fix-up strategies to figure out what is going on. Fix-up strategies like the ones we just talked about, right? So this was a bit that did not make sense to me, right? Who is Ted Williams and who is Raymond Carver? No clue. I know Jennifer Lawrence, like, a little, right? She was the one that was in Hunger Games, played Katniss, so I know that, right, they're talking about her acting. Okay. So let me reread this sentence. When things look easy, they're typically anything but. From Ted Williams' swing to Raymond Carver's prose to Jennifer Lawrence's acting, this has been demonstrated time and time again. So it sounds like they're saying, right, these are examples of people doing something that looks easy but actually isn't. And so I guess they're saying that drones look easy or maybe simple, right? But they're not. So that's my best guess for now, right? And I'm going to keep reading and see if that seems to make sense. So, in order to describe how drones work, you have to first distinguish them from their predecessors, remote control helicopters. I don't know this word, right? And if I don't, of course I could go Google it, right? But I'm feeling a little lazy. I don't want to go open a whole nother window and Google it. I want to see if I can just figure it out from looking at the word, the rest of the sentence, see if I can figure out what's going on. So I see this prefix, pre, right? Just a P-R-E. And I know words like predict, prepare, and pretest, right? And so if I look at those, well, they're all having to do with doing something before. I predict something before I know it. I prepare for something before it happens. I take a pre-test before I learn something to see what I know before I learn that thing, right? So if it means before, then that gives me a little hint, right? And so I think, okay, something that came before drones, and then they say remote control helicopters. Well, I know that remote control helicopters have existed before drones. So if they're saying distinguish them from their predecessors, I think they're just talking about the things that came before them, right? And one of the examples they give is remote control helicopters. Now this next bit, according to Michael Perry, a public relations manager at a drone maker, the key difference between the two airborne devices is that drones have some level of autonomy, meaning they can fly, hover, or navigate without input from a pilot. So I don't really know this word either, but it kind of looks like automatic, right? Auto, yeah, at least we got that first bit, right? And the words after say they don't need a pilot, right? So it actually defines the word for me right there. Some level of autonomy, dash, meaning, right? What does autonomy mean? Well, they tell me right here. They can fly, hover, and navigate without input from a pilot. So they can fly alone. Fantastic. They defined it for me. Oh, so convenient. Don't have to Google anything. Now, right, it is your turn. So what you are going to do is you will have this assignment. And in it are 3 different articles. Article 1 about video games. Article 2 about camel hair, right? And then Article 3 is about this team of all female wildlife rangers in Kenya. So you get to choose, and you're going to pick just one. Only one, right? And what you're going to do is you're going to read it, and as you read, you're going to highlight the parts where meaning breaks down, right? Where it gets confusing. And that could be a single word you don't know, could be a whole sentence that's a little confusing, or even a whole paragraph where you're like, I have no clue what they're talking about, right? And then you're going to use the comment feature to write what you think that confusing part is saying and how you know. Now, this is a challenge for you, right? So please don't use outside help, like Googling a word or asking someone. It's not about getting it correct. It's about using the skills we have to take our best guess, right? So for example, if I am reading this bit right here, a study by Oxford University researchers on how playing video games affects mental health used data from video game makers, marking what the authors say is a rare collaboration between academics and the game industry. Between academics, right? isn't that like math, science, history, language arts, right? So maybe I don't know that word. So I'm going to highlight it, and then I'll put a little comment here, guessing. School stuff. That's what you'll do. Bye, y'all.